Good afternoon. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 6th episode of our Mental Health Matters Returning with Resilience series. As a leading provider of the highest quality evidence-based mental health services and programs for children and adolescents for 25 years, we're really excited to be bringing this series to you that is a series of conversations, tips, tools, and resources to help support the mental health of children and families as we head back to school. I guess it's only a week away now. Thank you to Children's Services Council of Martin County and CORE for making this prevention service possible. The first series of Mental Health Matters focuses on returning with resilience. And our goal with this series, as I said, is to provide you with practical tips and resources from experts to be able to return with resilience. Today, we're discussing tools for childcare staff and parents to support newborns through age 5. And let me start by introducing our guests. Thank you both for being here today. We have Elizabeth Appleton, who is Tykes Teens Director of Childcare Mental Health Consultation. Elizabeth has been working in the field of early childcare education for close to 30 years and joined Tykes Teens in 2017. After working at the University of South Florida on a project supported early childcare staff and programs with evidence-based social emotional practices and system changes support. She's a national certified trainer in the pyramid model and developing leadership teams. Welcome, Elizabeth. And we also have Laura Gerlando, who is Tykes Teens Director of Infant Mental Health. Laura started her journey as a mental health counselor with Tykes Teens, first as a master's level student intern, and then as a staff member since 2016. Laura is a licensed mental health counselor and rostered child parent psychotherapist, and is also a Circle of Security facilitator and EMDR and perinatal mental health trained. So welcome to you both again, and thank you for joining us virtually today to share your insights. Just to kind of kick things off, Tykes Teens is the sole provider of infant mental health services and infant early childhood mental health consultation on the Treasure Coast. And if you've seen any of our previous episodes, we've focused mainly on the elementary to high school students. And newborn to 5 years old is often not an age group that people think of when they think about mental health. Many ask, how does a newborn have a mental health issue? So before we get into all of your great insights and recommendations that you have to share, Laura, can you give us kind of an overview? What is infant mental health and why is it so important to include newborn to age 5 in this series?
Sure. So infant mental health really focuses on the relationship between a young child ages 0 to 5 and their primary caregiver or caregivers. So what we've come to know is that young children do remember and are impacted by adverse experiences. Young children often express this through their behavior because that's how they primarily communicate. And we help children and their caregivers recognize what the meaning behind that behavior is. What is it communicating? And what is the need that they're trying to get met and put into words? So we help that caregiver put into words what that child's feeling or experiencing so that they can feel seen and heard. So young children grow, learn, and heal also within the context of relationships. So our work primarily focuses on dyadic intervention. Our infant mental health therapists support enhancing attachment when there has been an adverse experience and or when the relationship may have been ruptured or in need of repair.
Okay, great. Elizabeth, your work focuses on the child care provider side of infant mental health. Tell us a little bit about what is infant early childhood mental health consultation. That's a lot of words. What does it mean?
It's a lot of words.
What does it mean?
Well, I really want to first start with talking about what is healthy mental health development for our very young children, that 0 to 5 population. And when we think of that, we really think about these skills such as learning to have form close relationships, whether it's with a caregiver in the classroom or peers children have in the classroom. We know that they need to form those close relationships, as Laura has spoken about, to heal if there's adverse experiences. We know young children are learning to manage big emotions at this age during that language development, and you put in those big emotions to manage. That's a skill that we have to think about teaching children and what that looks like. We want them to learn to resolve conflict peacefully. And so that looks different at different ages. And so, for example, when we think about a child learning to calm down, they may want a toy. We really help them recognize their emotions. We might offer them some choices. We want, as caregivers, to model those coping strategies. So whether it's breathing or blowing bubbles or going for a little walk or coloring. So as adults, we want to be the ones that support those emotional skills that we know are developing during the 0 to 5. And so when we look at mental health consultation, it really is a preventative-based approach that supports early care and education staff through a facility, through the whole facility and program, supporting those healthy social emotional development. And mental health consultation really is about supporting the caregivers that are in the classroom. So we actually have 12 collaborative sites across the Treasure Coast that we have infant mental health therapists in those sites, providing mental health consultation to the teachers and the directors and all of the adults that come in contact at that site. And we help build their capacity. We look at their strengths. It's a strength-based approach. So we look at what's going really well in the classroom and how do we increase those practices that we know will help support all of the social emotional development. And just to give you an example, we may have a teacher that has a wonderful visual schedule up in the classroom, and we may have a child in there that's really struggling with transitions. And so we support that teacher learning to use that visual schedule. So we've got a great strength about having the schedule. Then how do we implement it with kids that may be struggling with challenging behavior? So our therapist would really observe and have a reflective conversation with the teacher and talk about, well, maybe this child can be the visual helper to help move the schedule, or maybe they need to hold the schedule. So it really is about increasing their capacity and reflection on how to support that challenging behavior.
Great. So it's the teacher and all of the children in the classroom. Mm-hmm. Laura, I didn't mention when I did your introduction that not only is this your professional area of expertise, but you're also a parent who had a newborn during the pandemic, and she's now entering preschool. Can you tell us, both from the professional, but also your personal experience and what you recommend for parents that are preparing for this transition into preschool or back to in-person childcare?
Sure, absolutely. So for me, and like many of us, the pandemic was not something we saw coming. It wasn't something we could prepare for in advance. And for myself as a new parent, I experienced some trauma or adverse effects or stressors related to having both a pandemic and my first child during a pandemic. So those two things being somewhat isolated, but also intertwined because of it being at the same time. So I think every parent has had their own stressors associated with the pandemic, at least initially. It could have dramatically changed plans that you had for your child, for yourself, for your relationship with your child. I know for me, there were things that I didn't get to have, like that one-on-one support from providers in the community, as well as that peer-to-peer support from other new parents. So I will say, though, that I was very privileged to have the ability to continue to work during the pandemic. Many folks have had to to work during the pandemic in person or lost jobs during the pandemic, which is another stressor that many of us faced. But I was very privileged in that I was able to work from home and have a secondary caregiver with my child at home while I worked, and to be able to see her throughout the day and have her home for so long. Whereas had the pandemic not happened, she would have been in daycare much sooner. So I think many of us new parents who did have our children at home because we had the ability to do that, or we had the support to do that, are now having 12-month-olds, 15-month-olds, 9-month-olds going to school after maybe a period where they had a completely different first 9, 15, 12 months of life. So again, I was very fortunate in the things that I did get from having this happen, this unfortunate event happen. My daughter just started preschool last month. She's 15 months old. It was the right time for my family. And it was a great time for her because she really was ready for that social interaction. She was more than ready. But based on my professional background in infant mental health, as well as my own personal experience, I have some tips that I would love to share with you guys today. So the first is start talking about school with your little one before school starts, because it's not just for them, it's also for you. Mm-hmm. So it's a huge transition for both you and your child. And it's important to talk about it. It's important to externalize it and not just keep it inside, because it is going to happen, and it helps prepare both of you. Another thing that was a great resource to me is if you can reach out to entities like Early Learning Coalition in your area to speak to their resource and referral specialist. You can get a list of childcare centers and where they're located, ratings, and also you can track center history and compliance with safety regulations.
And just to interrupt you 1 second, just so you all know that are watching, we will have all of these resources that Elizabeth and Laura are sharing with us on our website. So you'll be able to click right on the links and find the specific information that they're talking about.
And I'd be happy to share my little 10 or so tips as well.
Awesome.
Another tip that I have is call early and request your child be added to a wait list. And there's more to that, but initially for me, I just assumed that I could wait until she was going to go to school. But the reality is that schools fill up pretty fast, especially around this time. So it's really important to call around, find schools that are close to you or to your work, and identify the ability to be added to a wait list, because even if they're not currently available, wait lists, what they do is each center will typically call each family and say, are you still needing a center? If they say no, you get moved up on the list. So being proactive about that and scheduling walkthroughs, even at centers that may not have availability right now, because you could get into one center and then find that it's not a good fit and you need to switch centers. It's good to have other options, or maybe other preferences that you had that opened up. Researching and developing a list of questions is really important as well. So what are the things that are important to you for your child? For me, it was both the safety component of, the day-to-day physical safety, but also the emotional safety was very important. I wanted my child to have an experience of feeling connected and relating to the people who are caring for her and her peers. Finding out what precautions are currently in place or expected to be in place as shifts occur, such as with CDC guidelines or state guidelines around COVID-19. Another thing, just to kind of shift gears, is really having compassion for yourself. You are new to this, or you are at least new to this during a pandemic. So I think it's okay to let the center know as you identify and pick a center that you are new at this. It's okay to name that. I told my center director for my daughter these questions just come to me day to day. I have a lot of questions. I hope it's okay. I just ask you as they pop into my head, because sometimes you don't have all the questions in advance, or things that you didn't think you'd have questions about. And again, that really speaks to trusting and allowing the center to help guide your child's transition. So asking questions, how is it going? How is that transition going from day to day? Working together to identify what will help streamline your child's process and their routine as it's kind of formulating. And once you select a center, being direct in your communication with the teacher or the director. So asking about, just on a regular basis, how did their day go? How's their overall transition going? How are they interacting with peers? What are they learning about? And then this speaks more to my experience with infant mental health, is the idea of speaking the unspeakable, speaking in narratives. So providing narratives around developing new routines. So this is with your child directly. So for me, it sounds something like, today we're going to school. School is where you meet your friends and see your friends. You love your friends. You get to sing, you get to dance, you learn at school, you eat lunch, you take a nap, and you play with your friends on the playground. So getting your child excited about what's to come every day, because they don't know until you share about it and you remind them where they're going to go. They need that roadmap. And narrating that, you can also use visuals, but giving them a roadmap to what's to come each day as they transition from being at home to school. You can also provide narratives around those little moments. So you're getting to the center, you're getting ready to get out of the car, or you're getting into the car. We're getting into the car to go to school now, or we're at school now. Mommy and daddy love you so much. You're going to have a great day. Oh, there's your teacher. Let's say hello and then I'm here to take you home now. Let's say goodbye. So you really make it an interactive space for your child to be part of that transition. Another thing that you may start to see as you have a child go to school for the first time is that they're learning things that they're not learning with you, and they're coming home and they're sharing it with you, maybe very subtly. So for example, my daughter was going like this. She was doing like a hand signal. And I said, oh, are you doing the itsy bitsy spider? And she was just like, mm-hmm. So then I sang her the song, and she showed me the whole thing in movements with her hands. She showed me recently that she washes her hands, because I said, I got to wash my hands. And then she went. So they're doing all kinds of things that we don't know about per se until they show us, or until we ask the center. So my tip with that is that you can really integrate that into your home time. So I've really come to enjoy singing the Itsy Bitsy Spider maybe 5 or 6 times in a row. But my daughter loves it, and it really helps to let her have that time with me too, not just at school. So she's sharing that with me. She cared enough to share that, and I cared enough to reciprocate. Accepting, okay, so I want to shift a little bit to more related to getting sick. So many of us who have had your child at home this whole time have not really been exposed to a lot of illness or sickness, right? So true story, my daughter went to school, had a great first 5 days. That Friday came home and had a fever and was out the entire next week. So she started her transition, got really into routine, and then had a whole week off from school. And of course, the week back was a little rough. Those first 2 days for her were really rough. So I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not if your child will get sick, it's when. And that was something that was happening before the pandemic. It will continue to happen. And the younger your child is, it more likely their immune system, they're going to get sick probably more frequently. And that's okay. And you'll probably get sick too. So really supporting yourself and accepting that could happen, whether it's COVID related or not. and accepting that those routines may have to be re-implemented, relearned from week to week. Because in my daughter's view of the world, 1 week and then a week off, it's like starting new at that point. She doesn't have maybe that full picture of reintegration, and that resilience is still growing, although she is very resilient. And then my last tip is to just continue to foster that open communication as a parent with your center, because every relationship matters and supports your child's experience.
All great stuff. And I will get that list from you, and we'll get that up on the website, because that sounds like a great checklist to refer back to. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So Elizabeth, from your perspective, what are some important things for parents and early childcare providers to keep in mind from your side on how to transition back?
So, Misty, when we think of safety, I like to call it sometimes a safety net. We think of young children and their environment and needing to be safe. So whether it's based on ratios or the number of kids in the classroom, cleaning procedures, following CDC guidelines, it might be even thinking about visitors coming in the classroom. We have to think of that for our very young children, but we also want to consider, and Laura brought this up, that emotional safety, right? For example, how are caregivers really containing their own anxiety and fear with a new routine and starting a new school and the ever-changing things that are happening with the pandemic? How are they containing that for their children? Are they doing modeling for their children, using different coping strategies? So again, thinking about that breathing and bubbles and taking walks and coloring, so that their children are learning that. And I go back to the visuals. Laura talked about this a lot, not only in words and a narrative, but doing visuals to have a routine. And so we know that young children during that language development have a really hard time sometimes remembering what's coming next, or what may happen after you wash your hands or after you clean up. And so starting to have visual routine pictures at home, so that when you as a caregiver are feeling anxious or fearful, you can rely on those visual pictures. You can help your child learn what's going to happen in the schedule. And then if you're listening as a caregiver or a director in a center, it's so important to really have those visuals available for children in the classroom, so that if a child is struggling with their emotions, that you can help them see what's coming next, or maybe even having a place where they can calm down. We know that some really key things need to happen in our classrooms as we have children transitioning back, and that's really about having thoughtful transitions. So what do we do when we move from one center to the next center? Or what does it look like when we come from outside to inside? Are we lining up by hopping like bunnies? Are we flapping our butterfly wings? And so children really need those interactive things happening during transitions. We also know that developing 3 to 5 classroom rules and putting a visual with it really helps children that are having those big emotions and challenging behavior know what to do. And lastly, one of the most powerful things I think we can do as caregivers, whether it's at home or in the classroom, is using what is called positive descriptive feedback. And there's lots of research out on positive descriptive feedback that shows that behavior changes and learning happens because we're giving that feedback. And so that positive descriptive feedback might look like something like this. Wow, you picked up the blocks when you heard the cleanup song start. So it's really being descriptive on what the child is doing well, or what rule they're following, or if they did that transition like hopping like a bunny. And so it's really important to make sure that we have those really key practices. One of the resources that I've supplied, Misty, that we'll have up on our website is that a pyramid model kind of checklist. So it's called Rebuilding Pyramid, Connecting After a Break. And it's a list of key strategies to think about to have in your classroom. So if you're listening as a teacher again, or as a caregiver in a classroom, would be a great tool to use. I've also put in there a tool for both parents and teachers in the classroom, and it's on labeling and understanding your child's emotions. And so that, again, it will be a great resource to really help with what's going to happen with all these emotions, whether it's coming from the caregiver or supporting your child with those big emotions.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So we'll have a whole bunch of information for the parent side and a whole great resources for the caregivers and teachers as well up on our website. Thank you again, both, for sharing all of this. I want to give you an opportunity. Anything else, closing comments you'd like to share?
Sure. It's okay if I go first, Elizabeth?
Sure.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Elizabeth said about big feelings and how new parents or parents bringing their kids into school for the first time since the pandemic started. Those transitions can be really hard. And I know for me, seeing my daughter cry, having to see me go bye-bye, I had to contain myself, or during pickup, knowing I had to get her right into the car and then drive home. I think it's really important to identify what you're needing as a parent to feel contained, to then be able to support your child and really be present with how they're feeling. So like this morning, my daughter, for the first time, went right into the director's arms and didn't cry. She usually cries for about 5 minutes and then she's fine. But she went right into her arms and waved to her as she was going into her arms, and then started to cry a little bit. And I said, it's okay to be happy and sad at the same time. You can feel both of those feelings. But it's taken me some time to get used to that transition and being okay with knowing she's going to cry, and how can I comfort her in that process. And when I see her, how can I spend time with her, getting her into her car seat, speaking to her, and so forth. So I just wanted to share.
Thank you. Thank you. Elizabeth?
I would say just really thinking about safety from multiple perspectives, right? That physical safety that we want to know that's happening around things at centers related to the pandemic, and also supporting that feeling of safety related to emotions, a change in routine. Really also, and Laura spoke to this, allowing yourself to have some self-care. And so taking care of those emotions that you may have related to the changes. And when we think of teachers in the classroom, sometimes, we know they have 10, 12 kids in a classroom, and thinking about how can you step for just a minute and take a deep breath, or maybe find a thought of a special place that means a lot to you, a day at the beach, just a moment of a thought, so that you can be calm and regulated to really support the children. And just remembering our children under 5 are going through so many developmental milestones, and that this time is really important for that social emotional development, all those skills that we know that they're learning that will be honestly lifelong skills that they'll need.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you both again. And I want to thank Children's Services Council of Martin County and CORE again for making this series possible. And thank all of you out there for joining us as well. You can find all of the full Mental Health Matters Back to School series on our website, along with all of the tips, resources for additional information at tykesteens.org. And if you're interested in supporting the mental health of children and adolescents throughout the Treasure Coast, visit tykesteens.org/givehelp for a variety of ways that you can make a difference in the lives of children and families in our community. Thank you again. Thank you both. Take care.